And I want you to know this is going to be a big event, and the reason that you're going to know that is because I have new shoes. What do you think? The debut of my shoes. That's what we're all here to talk about today. And I picked them out myself, though wife approved. So we're going to unveil something today. I'm going to try and make this not too long, but long enough to try and explain what the heck's going on. And I want to start out by telling you a little bit of a story. So about 40 years ago, we asked a pretty important 3-word question. We asked it quite a lot. And that question is it possible? And 40 years ago, I asked my engineer at the time, as we looked at this new thing called a CD player. That was the first time we'd ever seen anything like it. And on the back was a little RCA jack that had digital audio coming out of it. And I said, is it possible that we could take that and do something with it externally and come up with an audio signal? And he and I worked on that for probably 6 months, figured out it actually was possible. And the result of that is we introduced the world's first external high-end audio DAC. We only had the exclusivity for about 3 months, but that's okay. We were there and we figured it out. Move forward about, 30 years. And my son, Scott, who's here somewhere, he came to me and he said, is it possible to take all this stuff, all of it, the wires, the boxes, everything, and condense it down into a little box about the size of a novel and play the stereo? And I said, yeah, it's possible, but hard. And so he worked on it for, how long? A couple of years?
Yeah.
A couple of years. And what came out was Sprout. And Sprout was revolutionary at the time. It was the size of a novel, and it drove the entire system. I remember when Scott had me put it on the Infinity IRS 5s. And we played it in that little tiny box, and that was just kind of a cool thing. So about 5 years ago, we started asking a different 3-word question. Instead of asking, is it possible? We started asking, what would happen if? And one of those questions that we started coming up with is something I've been working on for a long time. What would happen if we built the ultimate chassis? What would happen and what would it look like? That ultimate chassis, in my view, would be multiple chassis. There'd be an inside chassis, there'd be an outside chassis. You'd be able to keep all the noise out and any of the noise inside. We would be able to have the 1.5-inch thick chunk of metal all sculpted on the front. So we'd be, and could we make that in the United States at a price that would not cost a Rolls Royce? And at the time, the answer was no, couldn't do it. But we started asking more about if that was, not if it was possible, but what would it look like? What would happen? And then about 4 or 5 years ago, Darren Myers, and I got to tell you just a little quick story about Darren. Darren Myers is a great engineer. He used to work at Class A, and he said, he wrote me a note and he says, I want to work for a company that is caring about sound. I want to work for a company that actually cares about how things sound. And can I get a job with you? I said, nope. We don't have an opening. And he said, I'll come be a tech, I'll wash dishes, I'll do whatever. So Darren came in as a summer, and then he moved to Boulder from Canada, came in, and we just fell in love with Darren. He was just such a bright kid. And before you know it, Darren was coming to me and he was saying, now we've switched from Darren being a tech to Darren being an engineer. And Darren came to me and he said, what would happen if I were to come up with a preamplifier, and I know a lot of you have guessed, that challenged the laws of physics? I said, okay, I like where you're going. And he said, I'm imagining a preamplifier that has such low harmonic distortion and noise that it exceeds 150 dB, which is almost the level of a single molecule of air hitting your eardrum. What would happen if I could do that? And what would happen if that also had an extended bandwidth out to beyond a megahertz? And I said, after we had you checked into the lunatic asylum, we'd be interested to hear how that sounded. And then he said, well, and then here's another thought. What if I was able to create a phono stage that had no feedback whatsoever, zero, because you know, like I know, that the problem with phono stages is that any amount of feedback starts clouding up the signal. You get it more two-dimensional. He said the ultimate would be zero feedback, no feedback whatsoever. And I said, but how are you going to keep the distortion and the noise down? He goes, I got an idea. So then you put that into your pipe, and then this guy right here, Doug Goldberg, I don't know how many of you know Doug Goldberg. Doug used to be the director of engineering at a little company called Northrop Grumman. And they make these invisible planes and I don't know, all the stuff that he'd have to kill me.
I've tried a few times.
I know. And he said, what would happen if you rethought the direct stream DAC? What would happen if you took that concept of converting everything over to DSD, but then from that point did things in a very different way, in a way that would bring amazing measurements and amazing sound, direct coupled, no transformers, none of that. So what would you think about that? I said, I think that would be pretty amazing. So Doug and our chief engineer, Bob Stathier, got together and they started plotting. Then all of a sudden, we had a whole group of things and this new idea for a chassis that I went to, and this is the final part of the story, our purchasing manager, and I said, what would happen if I tasked you with coming up with, and I detailed this chassis out to him. I said, could you figure out a way to make that in the United States? Could you figure out a way to get this thing actually built without breaking the bank? And he went to town, and he figured it out. So, put all that together. Oh, and then the last part of the story, I went to our, and we figured the whole thing out, right? So I went to our engineering manager, Barry, and I said, hey Barry, what if I walked in your door and said, what would you think about us completely revamping the entire source control line, doing a whole bunch of products all at once, and come out with it in completely new form factor, all new circuits, all new boards, all new software? And he said, I'd basically kill myself. And I said, good. So gave him a knife and said, go for it. And this was a couple of years ago, this whole thing kind of coalesced. And what it resulted in is an entirely new line of products that is right here, and there it is. So this is the PMG series. I got convinced that I should put my name on the product. And I felt strange about it at first, but at the end of the day, it does encompass everything I have ever wanted, ever dreamed about in products. And I want to go over briefly, let's see if we can get, I want to show you, maybe, Scott, could you?
Preamp?
Yeah, the preamp.
Come on, please.
I want to show you what we did inside, because the first product, the preamp, is really something extraordinary. That preamp literally has the lowest harmonic distortion and noise, I think, of anything else ever built. It is better than 150 dB down, which is, as Doug will tell you, 150 dB is pretty extraordinary.
Very extraordinary.
It's a logarithmic scale.
Thanks, Chris.
Yep.
There you go. And you can see this is the chassis within the chassis. So that we've kind of taken it apart. And if you look inside, see the caps in there? So one of the things that Darren Myers did is he said, why do we need electrolytics in the power supply? For years, we've used electrolytic capacitors in the power supply, and we know that electrolytics are not the best performers. And to make them better, we put little things called bypass caps on them because they don't have very good high frequency performance. So Darren said, why are we doing that at all? Why don't we just go out and buy some big ass caps and put them in there? So these big film caps in here are the power supply. And I don't know anybody else has done that yet, but we certainly have. This product is nothing short of extraordinary. From a measurement standpoint, from a sonic standpoint, it goes out well beyond a megahertz. Literally has no noise and no harmonic distortion. So that's something we're very proud of. The phono stage that I had talked about, which you can see out in the other room that we had hidden out there, the phono stage is, to my knowledge, certainly in the 51 years of building phono stages, is the first one we have ever had that has zero global feedback. And what does that mean? And I've talked about this before, and I've been, hey JJ, how you doing? Good. Familiar face. I've talked about this before, and thankfully, because of YouTube, I've been ridiculed more than a few times, which I just think is lovely. And that is and most people have not had it. And the first time I ever had it was with Harry Pearson at his home. And this is the rare occurrence when the surface noise, the ticks, the pops, and all the stuff that you have on a record are completely isolated from the music. It sits on a different layer. It is completely separate, and most people have never heard that. And when you hear it, you can't forget it, and you can't live without it. And Stan and I worked for years trying to get there, and we would get closer and closer, and the way we would do it is by lowering the global feedback, because for whatever reason, the surface noise stimulates in the feedback, whether it's TIM or SID, it stimulates that whole surface effect. And if you get rid of it, and then can figure out how to get rid of the noise and the distortion at the same time, you have something that is simply remarkable. Lastly, what I want to talk, maybe we could bring the DAC.
Sure.
So, as many of you know, DirectStream has been just a remarkable DAC. I'm sure a number of you already own DirectStreams, and they are remarkable DACs. And one of the things about the DirectStream DAC is how it works and what it does. It takes any signal in, whether it's PCM or DSD, it upsamples it to DSD 256, which is 256 times faster than a CD, and it produces DSD, which is pulse density modulation. It's just a single ones and zeros. And then we just put that through a low-pass filter, we amplify it, we put it through an output transformer, and out she goes. And it's about as close to analog as you've been able to get. Now that system didn't measure all that well, but it sounded amazing. So when Doug came to us and he said, why don't we rethink how we do this? Why don't we keep the same idea, but rethink the whole thing? And what came out of that is called Pure Stream. And you can see right here, this is a Pure Stream module. Now this takes any input signal, it raises it up to 8 times DSD 512. which is double the speed of what direct stream had. And then it goes into here. And in here, you can see these little modules. This is part what Doug brought into it. And we're calling it spectra wave. So it's a sequencer. It's a spectra wave sequencer, which basically takes that output, does all this magic stuff to it. It's kind of like a digital filter.
It does not break the laws of physics.
And it does not break the laws of physics. But we try. And what comes out of it is measures extraordinarily low distortion and noise, completely direct coupled. It goes through a simple low pass filter out through this amazing output stage. And when you hear it, I think you're going to be pretty stunned. So that's what this big deal was all about. It's introducing the PMG Signature Series. And these are shipping out, by the way. The preamp will ship in June. DAC ships in July. Transport right here ships in, what comes after July? August. And the phono stage in September. So anyway, any questions? Price? Okay. Now let me just, I want you to look at what Scott's holding. This is an 1.5 inch thick front panel, machined. You can see the nice PS wave on it. Chassis within a chassis. And the size of that transformer. Let's take some guesses. What do you think? We know there's a starting point. Direct stream was $8,000. So who wants to make a guess? Anybody?
Wow, 10 or 12?
12, 10,
4.
1 billion. Oh, I like it. Sold. Anybody else?
Take 1 Bitcoin.
8,000. Oh, I wish we could do that. But you're close. So we are able to get these out, at least the first few hundred. God only knows what's going to happen outside. Now, it is made in the U.S., but we are a global economy, whether anybody likes it or not. So for now, and we might have to do commodity pricing, right? This week it's going to be this much, but all these units will sell for $8,500. Wow. So we were able to get the pricing down, and it took a Herculean effort. I mean, Alex, who does all of our logistics and purchasing, was able to figure out how to get this chassis built right down the street from us for an extraordinary price. And that was all part of the key. Doug's ideas, Bob's ideas of how to make all of this work and not break the bank on that. So we're really thrilled. So yeah, $84.99. Yeah.
Whose transport are you using, and what's going to be the
well? So okay, I'm glad you brought that up. Not good. So Marantz, and they are the last manufacturers of the SACD drive, and they have announced that they are stopping manufacturing. So we made a last purchase with Marantz, and we've got 200 or 300 of them. And when those are gone, it's over. So this is. To say this is a limited edition oh, and one other thing I wanted to bring up about that I forgot. Inside of the PMG DAC is a brand new streamer, and it's built in as part of the price. And it is extraordinary sounding, DSD, you'll hear it here, but that little board in the back hooks right up. It's our programming genius Barry figured out a way even to it's really cool to hook it up to Wi-Fi. You go to the touch screen here. See these screens. You can that's how you control the volume on them. You hit a button and it puts a QR code on the screen. You hook your phone up to it. Boom, you're on Wi-Fi. I mean, it's that easy without a hassle. So all kinds of good stuff to make it easy. Streamers built into it. You can, as soon as Qobuz, the big secret, of course, Qobuz has their app coming out, but we're not supposed to say anything, so we won't. But when it comes out, it'll be ready to go. So any other questions? Would you like to hear something?
Do you do DSD? I mean, not
Do
DSD.
DSD?
So
I'm trying to think what
I'm
those-
tired.
what the- what-
Paul,
what
I'm
those things
tired.
mean? What
MQA.
No.
I
always
asked-
have this itch. Here.
That's why I asked. I
Yeah.
wanted to see your reaction.
No MQA. No, I think that those days are long over. But thank you,
They're-
James.